Hello and welcome back to Fred Up in the Shack. Today I'm just going to have a little chat to you today about some of the questions that I get on the videos. I'm not going to be going on air doing any sort of QSOs or anything like that. And I know right now a few of you are just like going to be basically crashing out of this video. Oh, I'll bugger it off if he ain't going on the bloody radio. Exactly. So yeah, thanks for dropping in. If you don't want to hear me waffle on, you know I waffle on. But please hang around, because this is going to be quite interesting, especially if you are new coming back to radio in the UK, or you're thinking about coming back to radio. Perhaps you've just rediscovered that CB still exists. You thought it was completely gone, something of your youth that completely went, and you've just discovered that, yeah, there are people on CB, and you're really, really interested in getting back into sort of CB radio. You know, you're at an age, a bit like me, where you're, let's be honest about it, you're middle-aged now. If you have a family, they've probably left home. You've got a little bit of time. You've got a little bit of cash, finally, after paying out all those bills and all that mortgage for all those years, you've got a little bit of cash. And now you fancy coming back to the hobby of CB radio, and you're not sure what to buy. And you're not sure at all. And this is what happens. People come onto the channel and they watch my videos of our little group on the 305. Love the chat. It reminds them so much of old CB. Yeah, there are a few kind of call signs that we sort of integrate into the videos, but it's still a bit of good old CB chat, and a lot of it I don't show you anyway, because it is just like day-to-day chatting about cutting our gardens and other problems that we have. And people come back, and quite often I get a question. It'd be like, Fred, you know, I want to come back to CB, Fred. I don't want to be a ham, Fred. I'm not interested in ham radio, not at this moment. I might go on to that, but I don't really want one of these ham radios, Fred, that you're showing us all the time, these CRT radios. You know, I want a kind of a UK radio. I want a legal radio. I don't really want to kind of be run a non-approved radio. I know there's very little chance of getting caught nowadays, which is true. There is very little chance, but I want to be legal, Fred. But I want a quality CB UK CB radio, a home-based radio where I don't want to muck about with a power supply and all of that Maloney. I just want a nice home-based radio, decent quality, something I couldn't afford back in the day, but now I can afford. But Fred, I've been online, I've looked on eBay, I've looked on Amazon, I've looked at Argos, Dixon's, if they still exist. I can't find it, mate. I can't find what I want. Can you recommend me a decent UK based CB radio, home based, with a built-in transformer and a speaker? What would you recommend? And my heart sinks when I get those questions, because that radio doesn't exist anymore, and if it did, I'd buy it. I really, really would. And it's so difficult for people coming back thinking that it's like the old days, that they're going to walk, as I say, into Rumbelows, into Dixon's, into Curry's, into Comet. Do you remember Comet? Or their CB Radio Shack, and there's going to be boxes and boxes and boxes of CB radios, and they can afford a little bit more than they could when they were teenagers, and they're going to pick up a really nice stonking home-based radio, and it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, honestly. It doesn't exist. There was some really nice radios back in the day, and this is the problem, really. There was so much choice, and even the cheap ones. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put some. I hate doing this to myself, because I'm now going to, by memory, I'm going to go through some of the radios that I remember and wish that they'd carried on producing and possibly improved. And then what I'm going to have to do now is, when I edit this, I'm going to have to go on the internet and try and find a picture to back up my bloody memory. I hate this, because it takes me ages in editing. But I mean, the cheap ones, I don't know if we're in camera, but just up there, look, you had the Murphy Homebase, the 1500. Wasn't a particularly great radio in its day, but it was a home-based radio. It had its faults. You had that Fidelity one as well, which was the sort of triangular wedge-shaped one, the one they built out of a clock radio chassis, if you like. That was, I think, the Fidelity 3000. Again, you know, they weren't dedicated home-based radios. They were quite often just mobile radios in a bigger box, but it was a one-box solution, and they did work. And even though that the market in the UK was very restricted compared to overseas in America. We had other things. I remember Grandstand, which was a generic kind of cheap Hong Kong make. I remember Grandstand produced a home-based radio that looked, I never had one, never heard one, but it looked pretty good. Had a nice sort of front-firing sort of speaker, stuff like that. But there wasn't that many really when you think back. I do remember one radio that I really sort of lusted after, and that was the Midland 78 base station. Now that really was nice. Again, I never saw one in the shop, so I imagine it was going to be quite expensive, bearing in mind CB radios were a little bit pricey when they first came out. But that Midland 78, and there again, if they produced that today and updated it with sideband to cover the just say the mid block, again, it was a decent radio. It seemed to have all of the controls that you needed. A nice sort of front firing speaker, analog sort of power meter, things like that. I mean, it looked really nice, but again, it fell to the wayside. And I've sort of, since I've come back on CB, I've looked around because I've really, as you know, I've ended up buying used HF radios just purely by sort of lack of choice, really. I would have liked to have gone down the legal home-based UK CB radio route. I just haven't been able to find anything. Nothing at all. I mean, I say back in the day that they were around. Do you remember? I remember Comtel made a really weird looking. I wonder if I can find a picture of that. Comtel made a really weird, like homemade looking sort of base station CB that we all laughed at the time. But actually, as things moved on, I mean, I know if you look on the internet into the 90s, I believe Team in the 90s made a small little like home-based radio that would have been fairly decent. I think that one would have been sort of okay. Albrook, if I pronounce that right, Albrook, they produced the AE 8000, which again I looked at. I think that was sort of more 2000s, but that was probably the last sort of Euro home-based CB radio that I could really sort of see. They come up for sale on Radio World every now and then, second-hand, about 150 quid, something like that, so they're not bad priced. But at least it was a base station radio. But of course, I mean, really, in America, that's where the quality base station radios always were. I mean, it was never really any competition from what we got in the UK, in my opinion. If I'm wrong, you know, you go in the comments and you say that our radios could compete with the American radios. But I mean, things when you look back now, and things like the Cobra, the Cobra 2000 GTL. I mean, what a radio! And I know Andy Tobin's got one of those. And see, nowadays, if you're thinking of coming back, yeah, you can still pick those up. They go for a fair penny in the UK, but quite often they're going to need some work. They're going to need a capacitor change. They're going to need some tuning. The chances, I mean, if you could find one mint in box, the electrolytic capacitors, they're going to dry out anyway if they've been in a box for 40 years, you know. But if you got one, you're still looking at big money for one of those. Very rarely they come up mint in box, and we're talking almost approaching 4 figures now in the UK. They go for big money. But yeah, the Americans really kind of had it sussed. And I suppose if you want to look to home-based radios, which are still available in America, I suppose you're looking at the Ranger radios. I mean, the Ranger, was it the RCI? Is it the 2995DX, which is what Awesome Dave's got, and also Andy Tobin's got one of those as well. Just got that one. I mean, that is a lovely radio, home-based sort of radio, nice sort of size, but like the jumbo sort of size case, nice big turned aluminium knobs on it. It certainly feels like a good radio. Again, you're talking, I don't know, you're talking quite high money. For the same money, you could get a pretty decent HF radio, really. You might just about pick up probably a Yaesu 450. You certainly could get some of the Alinco radios like I've got. So you've got to be dedicated. But those are really sort of nice radios. But again, they're mainly in America. The ones over here may or may not require tuning. And see, people are coming back, they're saying to me, Fred, I just want to put up an antenna. I just want to get sort of straight back to it. And the sad fact is with that question is the radio you want doesn't exist. The market just in the UK, it doesn't support manufacturers producing a radio just for us anymore. I mean, these radios you see here, obviously the Presidents, these are quite nice. Now, the Grant 2, these originally, President was an American-based sort of CB company. I mean, these are all made in China now. These ones are the European models. They cover the European band, so they typically cover the mid-block and also the UK FM frequencies, the odd 0.25 that we got stitched up with. And again, but they're not home based. And of course the CRT radios, CRT, I think it's a French company, again, you know, made in sort of China, and they can be reprogrammed. The best thing about it, because they're SDR type computer controlled, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments by saying that, but they're computer controlled radios, so they can be reprogrammed and widebanded to any frequency. These of course are ham radio transceivers. These are originally 10 meter radios. They're not designed for 11 meter CB use, but then they are reprogrammed for CB. But again, that makes them not type approved in the UK, illegal if you like. So you're not using a legal radio. These are legal, but not as powerful as them. But again, a base station doesn't exist. So people say, Fred, you know, what would be your choice today? What would be your choice? And I've had a look at it a few times, and the only radio that I would say that really would appeal to me, although it's not ideal, and I'll explain that in a minute, but is the Galaxy DX 2547, which I think that it's a US radio, but I believe that's still being sold. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've got a lot of US viewers, so over in the States, can you still buy that radio? I think it's still on Amazon, but it's the DX 2547. I think is one of the last home-based radios, even in the US, other than the Rangers, but the last home-based radios that are being sold, and it would be perfect for the UK. It's got a built-in power transformer. It's 110 volts. So, but I believe I did read somewhere that it is switchable, so they do switch to 240. But that aside, you can run them on a 12 volt power adapter, just a 12 volt PSU. They're not all that powerful, so you wouldn't need a big one. They're legal power. They're AM 4 watts and they're 12 watts SSB. So it's certainly a legal radio in the UK. If you did want more power, of course you could always go on the dark side and run them into a small linear. But yeah, I mean, it looks perfectly great on paper, but when you look a little bit deeper, because it's US based radio, it's only tuned really for the US frequencies. So I believe it runs from 26,965 up to a high of 27,405, which puts it onto the mid block, and that would cover my 305 on sideband. But of course that doesn't give you the extra height to get up to the 27,555, which is the triple nickel, which is the European International Calling Station, where you're likely to get the DX. So even if you bought one of those UK, and I believe you can just about find one in the UK, typically again we get a little bit sort of stitched up. I mean, bearing in mind this radio came out I think in 2009, so it's no spring chicken, but I believe they're around about £350 in the equivalent, equivalent dollars in the US, so about 350 quid. Time you bring it over here, you pay import duty, or you put a company will resell it on. Last time I saw it, they're well over 400. They're getting up to £500 for a radio which doesn't cover the FM, the UK FM, and it won't cover the triple nickel 27555. So guys, once again, you could get a pretty decent used HF radio, which is probably, I would stick my neck out and say a Yaesu 450 would be a better receiving radio on sideband. Not so sure about AM. I mean, the Galaxy might be really good. So yeah, that would be my, if they could produce a European version of that Galaxy 2547 and put the FM band on it, also expand it so it probably went up to 10 meters, and that would be perfectly great in my opinion. But I have looked to see in the past if that radio can be modded, and again, if you know it can be, because you probably know more than, well, you all know more than me, so let me know in the comments. But I can't sort of see anywhere on a Google search that there's any modification that could be made to that radio to expand it, like a Mars mod or something that would expand it to the European frequencies. So yeah, you're pretty buggered. If you are coming back to CB, if you're looking for the ultimate home-based CB radio, UK spec, UK legal. The radio doesn't exist. I wish it did, because I'd probably buy it, but the radio doesn't exist. So we end up with portable radios, that ones that have been reprogrammed, or the presidents that do the job perfectly fine, but it's not an all-in-one box sort of situation. So I hope that answers that question. I'll link people to this rant if in the future, and yeah, it's just to say there's just not the market for it in the UK anymore. I know when I produce videos, it looks like CB is really active, and it is in certain areas, but in certain other areas it is completely dead. It's nothing like it was before, but that's a good thing in a way, because a lot of the imbeciles that were on the CB, they've drifted off and gone onto the internet, and they're internet trolls now, and they abuse people on the internet. So it has left that the people that want to come back to CB, maybe like yourselves watching this video, and a bit like me, you're coming back to CB because you want to do it. You don't want to coming back just to annoy people, to troll people, to be abusive. You're coming back because it's something, it's nostalgia, something that you wanted to do back in the day, and you want to do it again. So you generally sort of, you know, take it seriously, have a good sort of chat. Well, there we go, just a chatty video. Sorry I say I'm not on the radio today, but that's it. I hope you're really well. Please stay safe. We're still in dodgy times. I don't know when we're getting out of this mess. I'm going to put some other chatty stuff over on Fred too as well. I've probably already got one up by now, just having a little chat to you if you like this sort of thing. But anyway, thank you very much if you stuck through to the end. I do appreciate that. Give me the thumbs up if you enjoyed my waffle. If you didn't enjoy my waffle, well, let me know in the comments, because I'm sure you will anyway. But as for now, as always, cheers, thanks for watching, stay safe, get on the air, get some skip, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Cheers, guys.